It's hard to ignore the growing presence of artificial intelligence these days. Not only do we hear about it all the time, but it's become a pretty big part of our day-to-day lives, having been integrated into many of the products and services we use on a regular basis. It's also had its fair share of criticism due to concerns about its carbon footprint, its potential for misuse, and the data used to train generative models such as Meta AI and ChatGPT. Still, we can't overlook AI's tremendous utility overall, and all the good things we can accomplish by applying it effectively and responsibly. Sure, some people have used it to create deepfakes, scams, and low-effort media content, but others are using it to save lives by diagnosing serious illnesses, detecting deadly weapons such as landmines, and improving access to nutrients and clean water. This got us thinking about how we can use AI here in the Caribbean to tackle many of the social, economic, and environmental challenges facing us on the path towards sustainable development. So we got in touch with one of the people already trying to figure out ways to do exactly that. Our pick was Dr. Curtis Charles, Dean of Studies at the University of the West Indies Five Islands Campus, and he gave us a glimpse into the future he and others are charting for the region.
We all know that our grandparents, your belly hurt. My grandparents going to say, go outside, grab some bush, you boil that bush and your belly feel good. Well, we never really commercialized those things, but we could do that now with artificial intelligence.
So let's talk about artificial intelligence and its potential to overclock Caribbean development in this episode of Caesar Voices. Curtis Charles has a background in architecture, higher education, and data science. And he spent over 30 years putting his skills to good use in various roles at academic institutions such as the University of Miami and companies such as Microsoft and IBM. Having cleared numerous hurdles to achieve his goals, he has a passion for helping individuals and organizations recognize and reach their potential. And this is on full display in his current role at UWI's newest campus in Antigua and Barbuda, which recently hosted a groundbreaking AI conference. I figure a good place to start us off would be, just tell us a little bit about this conference. A lot of our listeners will possibly have never even heard of it. What is the annual AI research conference?
So to discuss the conference, let me just discuss how we arrived at the conference. So I am at the University of West Indies Five Island Campus. It's the fifth campus and the fourth landed. And actually, a countryman, Dr. Williams, Denzel Williams, was our first principal. He and I came in with the leadership team in 2020, and we started with 124 students. We just crossed 1,000 students in less than 4 years. So the need in the Eastern Caribbean is absolutely great. I arrived there coming from Microsoft. I was a data science at Microsoft, consulting with university presidents and the C-suite on how they could use AI and data science to be competitive. So when I landed on campus in 2020, remember that's the height of recession, the first question I asked was, where's the AI presence? Because I think it's always important to know when you were born. We were born in 2019, which was the midst of the fourth industrial revolution. Yet there was nothing in the academic programs that looked like a fourth industrial revolution. We were really heading down the path of a little caveville, and that bothered me. I didn't want to leave. My home is still in the States. I didn't want to leave my home in the States and come to do the same thing I could do in the States. I wanted to be really innovative, and that's why they hired me. They wanted someone who had the ability to innovate, who came from corporate, who came from higher education. And I had served from faculty to department chair to dean to university president. So my role here was to build the academic enterprise and give back to my Caribbean. That was it. And what we decided then was, if we're going to do this, we're going to build a school of science, computing, and artificial intelligence. It's the only school of its kind in the Caribbean. And from that, if we're going to do that, we're going to launch a conference in the future. And that's how that started.
Okay. So how many instances of the conference have we had so far?
This was the first conference. This was the
Okay, this is
first
the very
annual
first one.
conference that we had, and I have to tell you, we started off with a very simple concept. I know from my work in the U.S. and with colleagues that Caribbean people are leading in technology like yourself, like what you guys are doing everywhere, all across the world. We are. The question was, but we always operate in silos. What if we could come together on Five Island Campus in Little Antigua and collaborate and talk about how we move the Caribbean further? And I have to tell you, man, I just wanted to be a fly on the wall because the best comment I think we got from this was someone who said, I've been all over the world to conferences, but I've never been to a conference where collaboration and networking was so central. And that's what we wanted. I mean, we had the vice president for AI and automation for IBM was our keynote speaker, Caribbean. The vice president for AI and machine learning at GlaxoSmithKline, the largest, one of the largest drug company in the world, was there. We had a Harvard vice provost was there, and we had colleagues. We had Google in from a Trinidadian guy flew in the last minute from to represent Google. He's in Kenya. We had people from Meta, we had from Microsoft, we had from Nvidia. We had all the major companies there who were Caribbean. And man, it was like a callaloo, man. It was like we were just vibing. And that was the real essence of the conference. I mean, we had a brother in Trinidad, Bevel Wooden. Bevel is known for his technology leadership throughout the Caribbean. Bevel and myself spent nights putting that agenda together. And we had colleagues from the U.S. Young man Christopher Jones, who was the he ran for Arkansas governor, colleague of mine from MIT. And we could have an MIT Caribbean festival here. I mean, there were so many of us from MIT who were here. It was funny. We had a whole contingent from Morehouse. So it was the diaspora that came together. It wasn't just Caribbean, it was the black diaspora that came together. And our vision has always been, could we connect the US diaspora, the Caribbean and Africa, and reverse that slave trade triangle that they throw on us? If we could reverse that from a technology perspective, that'd be incredible, Doc. And that was sort of like the emphasis of this conference.
I like the idea of Caribbean people and the diaspora coming together and creating that sort of energy of discussion. I guess what I want to know is, what were some of the key takeaways from this last conference, this first conference, really?
So the key takeaways that we're going to have a follow up, right? We're going to have a follow up from July 7th to the 9th
Right.
in Antigua. And what we wanted to do was to take away from we had three major clusters that bubble up: healthcare, AI and healthcare in the Caribbean, AI and education, and AI policy. We can't do the first two without policy and without government. The AI and education is interesting to us, man. Look, there's nothing we have to be proud about with CXC, where we had about 36% in passing math. I mean, that's just like we can't think about AI if we can't use this technology to help us improve computational skills.
Right.
So how do we reimagine? And that was the theme of the conference. The conference was reimagining the digital transformation of the Caribbean in an age of generative AI and the fifth industrial revolution. Because we're no longer talking about the fourth. We're in the fifth of how could these technologies like AI and machine learning and robotics and stuff lays with human beings. So we wanted to be way ahead of the curve. The other thing we wanted to do is we wanted, you from Jamaica, you guys are big. I'm from Trinidad. Trinidad is big. Nobody expects Antigua, right? So Antigua is one of the smallest island. We are the smallest campus. But when I came here, what we wanted to do with Professor Williams was to really own that territory of AI, because you guys have medicine, Barbados have law, Trinidad have engineering. Five Island just can't have the same thing that you guys have. We have to, and we thought that preparing students for the future of work was where we're supposed to be. We are one of the first campuses globally that's launching a generative pharmacy program, which is how do we develop drugs from artificial intelligence. We all know that our grandparents, your belly hurt. My grandparents going to say, go outside, grab some bush, you boil that bush, and your belly feel good. Well, we never really commercialized those things, but we could do that now with artificial intelligence. And why could we do that with artificial intelligence? Because before COVID, we were told that the reason why drugs were expensive is because it took a long time. They told us like 10 years, and it told us millions and billions of dollars. Yet we had the COVID vaccine in 2 years. If you do any research, you will see that that was made possible heavily by artificial intelligence. So if the big farmers could do it, we could start that industry in the Caribbean, and we could start it in listening just in Little Antigua, because we believe that what we have started could be the catalyst for the Silicon Islands of the Caribbean.
I like that, the Silicon Islands. You said earlier that, which is absolutely correct, we can apply AI to all of these things, but policy is key to all of it. You can't have anything without policy.
Yes.
How can AI itself support, proper evidence-based decision making when it comes to like policymakers?
Since I came here in Antigua and Barbuda, I have briefed the cabinet on many initiatives that we're dealing with AI. And I think the last time I briefed them, I said, look, I can't imagine in 2024 that ministers and cabinet are making decisions without some type of AI platform where the prime minister could log in at any point in time and see what each minister is doing, because it's about data-driven decision.
Right.
So the Minister of Transportation say, yeah, Dr. Charles, we have a bad issue with transportation. If we collect all that transportation data, we could be much more efficient. So I think from policymakers, the universities have a role in not only educating the policies maker about AI, but also partnering with them. Because, a 80-year-old politician is not going to want to go on the machine and do AI.
No.
But the university scholars could work with them hand in hand to make sure that we partner with them to develop the type of AI policies and give them the knowledge. I firmly believe all my years in the US, I left home in 1980 to go to college. But all my years really working for state institutions, the state supported the universities. The Caribbean nations support UWI. We have to do more in terms of supporting these countries so that it can make better policy. We are one of the only universities in UWI that's 100% supported by one government. So I see it as a duty for us to make sure that, especially with something like AI, that we help them develop the type of policies by educating them about the technology. They're not going to become AI technologists, but we could be partner to them.
Okay, I like that. Nowadays, when people think about AI, there's a lot of fear out there, right?
Right.
I don't know if people are guided by like science fiction or what, but this idea that AI is here to like, we tend to focus on a lot of the negatives. It's really encouraging to actually start focusing on the ways that AI can actually guide us forward. As you know, our focus here at CISA is on the climate change situation, the environment, and all of this. It kind of brings me around to your research. I thought it was very interesting. You've done some research into forecast-based financing. Could we talk a little bit about that research?
So forecast-based finance modeling kind of took me back to my research at MIT and the research I have done with the Japanese company Lafayette Engineering. And when you think about it, right, we know every year that we're going to be hit by hurricanes. We know that. We're in that path. Yet governments don't know what their liquidity would be if they have a level 2, a level 3, or level 5 hurricane. So forecast-based finance modeling is all about using predictive analytics to help governments in terms of planning for the event that they have a level 4 or level 5, right? I mean, we had when Barbuda was cleaned up, right?
Right.
The government had enough money on hand to be able to do that. So it's a preactive it's a preactive approach to assisting governments for disaster management and climate change issues. So it's the one thing I talk about data science and about AI is that we have data. It's not that we don't have data. We have been collecting data for a long time.
Forever, yeah.
Do we have the quality of data, and do we have the data in the state that it's supposed to be? And do we have a culture of knowing that that data could be used for decision making? So this is all about getting governments and culturalizing them to the form that they understand the power of the data they have in making decisions. So forecast-based finance modeling is just another tool that they could use in terms of, and when you think about the global south, where you are as well, the
Right.
global south could use this technology, could use these theories as much as possible because so many disasters come their way. Let's look at what happened, for example, in Kenya. In Kenya, I mean, we have the youths rioting and stuff. Did the government have a foresight of that to know that, look, if this go in this direction, then they need to have these types of reserves? Did they have any foreign funds for those type of contingencies? So it's more or less preemptive contingencies and planning by using the data to really make the data-driven decisions. And I mean, I love it. I mean, I'm one of those people who get high on design solution. I mean, we have this thing in architecture called problem solving, solution seeking. I love to dive into the data and give people the information so that they could make the decision. So that's what my research is about. It's about really helping governments, and it could be used in different formats. Right now, I'm coming in as the chair of the committee of deans for UWI, for all the deans. And one of the things we're looking at is a visioning session at the beginning of this semester, in the next couple of weeks, talking about how we could use forecast-based finance modeling to rethink how deans operate. So it's sort of like a sink, throwing the sink at them, basically thinking, well, because we have traditionally been so structurally functional, working in our silos. How could we collaborate? How could we? Everything about a university is about finance. So we have to basically use the technologies and the theories that's out there to make sense of the data that we have.
It's funny because, AI, the nature of AI itself is almost collaborative, would you say?
Yes, it's
Because
absolutely
it,
collaborative. When
right.
because when I hear the name, I mean, we're data scientists, but I normally see data science strategists, right? Because the science in it throws people off. You cannot do data science without social sciences, anthropologists, the educators. Somebody had to make sense of the data. So it's one of the most collaborative field, AI, and that is one of the ways I think your program could be used to take off the boogeyman from AI, because the person sitting across there who is the sociologist may think that AI is not for me,
Right.
but you need it in that group. I mean, the data scientist is just the person that's wrangling the data. Once you wrangle the data, you need all this cornucopia of different disciplines in order to make the decisions for the government or make the decisions for a client. So it's very, very collaborative. And if I may, you mentioned something just now about AI and people being afraid. I have a signature on my personal email that says, AI wouldn't replace you, in parentheses now. You probably heard that,
Yeah.
but someone using AI will certainly replace you right now. So,
Exactly.
yeah, so that's where
Exactly,
we are.
man. No, I love it because I really, the idea of removing the boogeyman is
Yes.
something I think is very important. We have this bad habit generally, I think, as humans, to blame the technology rather than to look at ourselves and our use of it. And as you said earlier, we have so much data already. A lot of research has been done for a long period of time in the Caribbean. Having a way to actually collate it, bring it together, analyze it, interpret it, so that we can get use out of the data is something that's very important. I feel as though the use of AI itself will also change our approach, not just in terms of the fact that we're using it, obviously, right? But literally the way that we approach problem solving, especially here in the Caribbean. I like the idea that AI can actually show us a new way forward, a new approach, you know?
Well, I have a term for that.
Yes,
When I came here, I said we need to creolize the technology, right?
I love
We
that.
if we look at AI just as it is, it remains that boogeyman, right? I'm all for flipping what they did to us, right? I'm all for flipping that. And Creole was used as a negative term, as you know. But if we could creolize that technology, meaning that if we could use it for us, by us, with us having the cultural context,
Right.
then I think this could be very powerful. You see, in the Caribbean, we still have the mentality, we still have the colonial mentality, right? In the sense that, yes, there is lots of data of research that was done in Caribbean, but it really wasn't done by us, right?
Right. Yeah.
So where did they host that data? They will be, you know, there was surveillance being done on Caribbean people, and surveillance being done on the climate, and surveillance being done on our culture. So that data needs to be accessible, and we need to take that data and now, instead of look at it from the perspective of the person who collected it, that may not be one of a Caribbean. Now we have to creolize that data and customize it to us. And I think that's where the challenge is. And you said something earlier about the conference. Look, everybody who came to that conference was an AI expert, but that wasn't the purpose of the conference. The purpose of the conference is, how could we massage this technology and make it ours? How could we connect? And I mean, you know, my wife always says that I'm a connector. That was my role, man. My role was just connecting this person with that person, connecting that person, because we haven't done that. And in connecting with each other, really what we were doing was creolizing the technology. That's really what we're saying. Because somebody will say, man, the greatest compliment I think we have from this was, Dr. Charles, I was always thinking about this, but I didn't know how to do it. But the fact that you guys are doing it, I'm going to be there. Look, we had over 350 people on campus. This is the first AI conference in the Caribbean. Almost 350 people for a small campus where I raised what, almost over 200 and something thousand myself. Going
Right.
and I learned to love to ask for money, because people are going to give money to something that's worthwhile. So the sponsorship was essential for us, but because people saw how we could integrate with each other regardless of where we are, and how we could bring the resources of those large companies to the Caribbean based on where they work. And I think that was a beautiful sight, man. I mean, we have lots of videos, and to look back on some of those videos and see the intent of the conference in realization was tremendous.
Can imagine. I can imagine. I love your approach to this whole thing. What you said earlier there about creolizing the AI itself, which I guess brings me to my next question, which is, we can see that AI has this transformative power in our region, right? But as you rightly pointed out, it really comes down to our understanding of how we're using it, our understanding of it, our taking that ownership of it. What are we doing in the Caribbean to sort of develop AI skills and research capabilities?
So we're doing some good work at the UE campuses, right? So I also lead the UE research cluster, generative AI for good research cluster. And we have colleagues from each one of the campuses that we collaborate on. We just wrote a paper for PAHO on using something that isn't really used in healthcare, which is, in consulting, we always talk about a customer journey map, right? So
Right.
we work with actually a young Jamaican OBGYN who's in Antigua, Dr. Tulak. And Dr. Tulak is, if you don't know her, brother, this is a young lady that's on fire. So she's on fire to curb cervical cancer among women. So she reached out to us and said there has to be a way that we could use AI to do that. So we are working with her on that research. She just came from Italy on a short course on AI. But the journey map, as you know, is like a sine curve, right?
Yeah.
And what we were looking at is each point at which the women come in, you take the information, they get treated. Either they survive, they don't survive. Each one of those dots along the journey map is data collected into data lake. If we could run algorithms on each one of those data ponds, let's call it the data ponds,
Right.
then we understand the data in there. And then if we open that pond to this tributary in the lake, then we could understand the interaction of each one of those data sets, relate, and better understand how this disease affect women, and better understand how we could curb it. So that is one way that we're working it. And our article is supposed to be coming out in a month or so from PAHO. But beyond that, look, the bold move that this government took. I mean, it took a lot of heart to say that you want to pay full for a university. I mean, the government was just like, I'm going to pay for the university. Everybody's like, man, we don't have no model for that, right? So they have been really supportive. And I say, especially Minister of Education, Minister Matthew, I mean, I tell him he's the grandfather of the School of Science, Computing, and Artificial Intelligence. He just was every Sunday every weekend we would get together. I mean, we were on speed dial because he really wanted the school. So to start this school 2 years ago, when we met three schools, School of Business and Management, the School of Health and Behavioral Sciences, and the School of Education and Humanities. The largest school on every campus, as you know, is always business.
Yeah.
This school started with 25 students. It's now the second largest school after business. So there's a need and an understanding within the OECS organization, within the Eastern Caribbean, that AI is something that we need to train youths in. So the governments give scholarships. So within the School of Science, Computing, and Artificial Intelligence, we have traditional computer science, we have AI, IT, we have data science. We developed one of the first interdisciplinary degree program, collaborating with some of my colleagues from MIT, which is a BSc in interdisciplinary degree in data science, innovation management, and computer science. And when you hear integrated degree like that, you say, well, what would somebody do like that? Well, let's go back to catastrophic disasters and climate change again. If a government wants to know again what's the liquidity, the data scientist is going to take a lot of data, a humongous amount of data, and the computer science mind is going to run algorithms on it.
Right.
The management piece is going to projectize that information, and economics in the background will understand the economic impact of that. So we're training in this School of Science, Computer, and Artificial Intelligence truly students to solve problems, wicked problems that hasn't even been thought about, that's related to climate change or disaster management. We're training these students to be the change agents within the Caribbean. Yes, we started in Eastern Caribbean, but the beautiful thing about UWI is the collaboration among the five campuses. I mean, so we collaborate with colleagues at St. Augustine, we collaborate with colleagues at Mona, Caville, Open Global Campus. We started with the generative pharmacy program we started. We are using faculty from St. Augustine. They are using faculty from us when it comes to AI. So that, again, collaboration, interdisciplinary. You can't stop that. So there's a movement among the universities to do that. But what we found out in the conference is that there are also allies who are not from UWI who are doing work. And that's why the conference is important. It brought a large segment of Caribbean nationals together who could collaborate with the university and collaborate with governments on policy so we could move the Caribbean forward. So I am fired up according to Brack and ready to go. I mean, the future looks good for the Caribbean. We just need to move the governments by educating them forward. And there's some governments that really get it. This government gets it, and the young Prime Minister of Grenada gets it. I mean, so we have some allies in moving this technology forward to improve the Caribbean.
That's very exciting. Just seeing the direction that we're headed in. Um, I mean, you kind of spoke to this a little bit, but if we could hone in on it,
Mhm.
what would you say are some barriers to progress as it relates to developing AI in the Caribbean or use of it?
Well, some of the barriers were some of the same barriers that started in Silicon Valley, right? You need money. I mean, we're developing these young students on generative pharmacy to come out and use AI to develop drugs. They're going to need venture capital, right? So
Right.
governments need to buy in the fact that we need to start these. Look, there's no reason why the Caribbean shouldn't be further where we are. There's no reason why we shouldn't have a Silicon Islands of the Caribbean. No reason. The funding is important. So we need to have the funding. We also need to have government sensitive of the art of the possible, right? Barbados Prime Minister gets it. I mean, she understands the power of the possible. We need more governments to see what this technology could do and invest into it. But I think the other block to progress is honesty, right? Look, we need to be honest. As experts, we need to be honest and say jobs are going to be lost. I mean, look,
Yeah.
jobs are going to be lost. We can't dig our head in the sand and say, but if jobs are going to be lost, it's a great opportunity for education institution to rethink how they engage the community, right? Because Universities haven't really engaged in retraining like that. We left that to community colleges. But man, that's a great opportunity to embrace the governments who support you and say, how could we retrain your government staff so that they understand data, they have a sensitivity of data, so they understand how to make data-driven decisions, which is going to be different than making a decision by the seat of your pants. So it is. I think for us, we have a lifelong learning unit that now reports to academic affairs, myself, and we are going out in the community. We are training with short courses, and AI is one of the areas that we're going to put at the forefront. So there are barriers, but there are lots of opportunities. Honesty, I think, is the best policy for us, and I think we could go forward.
I like that. You said it. Yes, jobs will be lost. We're facing it, right?
Yeah.
But I imagine, you know, jobs will also be created, not just in terms of training people to use AI itself, but if AI literally changes our approach to how we approach problem solving and so on, I imagine that new approaches yield new needs that then need to be filled,
Yes.
you know?
Yes. I mean, if we take the COVID virus, for example, I mean,
Right,
I'm firmly a believer that more people died of COVID, not so much about disease, but more people died because a lack of interoperability, right? Interoperability meaning, let's take townships didn't know what the next township need, or
right.
what the next township was doing, or where the disease was moving. So if our IT systems, I mean, hospitals have like 5 IT systems that doesn't talk to each other. But if we have the interoperability, and I'll age myself here a little bit because I'm a Star Trek fan, but when the ships go to the when the ships goes to the Federation, they had a duck.
Right.
They can't dock unless there's interoperability between the Federation and the starships,
And it,
right? And
right.
then they talk to each other. If our IT systems within states and counties and townships were talking to each other, we could know who have more PPP than the other person. We could know who have more supplies. We could know where the disease is moving in your direction. That's what we need to do for the next healthcare. So what is that going to do? That's going to create more jobs, because
Precisely.
now you need more IT support people. You need more people with transportation. We after COVID, everybody excuses that we can't get supplies of sugar or oil or something because the supply chain is broken. Well, let's reimagine the supply chain in the case of a pandemic and retrain folks to do that. So they are all opportunities that AI produces. We just need to have, man, we need to have the thought leaders who could lead the discussion. And that need to be, and again, I come back to the conference, that needs to be in every dot of the diaspora. It can't be in the US. It can't be in Africa alone. It can't be in the Caribbean alone. We need to connect the dots. I mean, I'm awesomely surprised. I'm happy that I meet you guys, because you guys are connecting the dot for me. And I hope this is not the end of our conversation
No.
and the end of our collaboration. And you guys are going to be here next year. But this is what it is. This is what it is. If we could connect those dots, man, we could solve the problems. We could solve the problem.
Absolutely. It goes back to everything you've been saying, even about the conference, because one thing about us as Caribbean people, and in fact the diaspora, is that there's one thing that we're good at doing is being resourceful. It's taking a problem, a situation. It would just be incredibly disappointing to me if in the, let's call it the chaos of
Yeah.
change that would occur
Mhm.
as we shift into this, it's a revolution, right?
Yeah,
If
absolutely.
we are not able to sort of build the plane while diving, so to speak, Another thing I was thinking, though, we spoke about finance as one key problem, which it is, right?
Yeah.
Is this something where we could engage the private sector? Are there ways of doing that?
So one of the things about the conference is that we had topics related to almost every wicked challenge of the Caribbean. And there was a VC panel. So there was a venture capitalist panel that really talked about how you raise money, what are some of the things that you need to do. But it was all private sector. I don't think we could engage in this revolution. And unlike Gil Scott Harris, this one is being televised. The fact of the matter is that if, as long as we could engage the private sector, I think they will buy into the promise of AI. One of the Almost every person I engage in terms of raising fund. Well, the government was very helpful, but there were a lot of private sector that we raised because they see this as the beginning of something and they want to be on the ground floor.
Absolutely.
But we can't just engage them only when we want venture funding. We got to engage them now. And the universities, again, is a great repository of that. We just signed a MOU with the government here for in the US, we call it SBDTC, Small Business Development Technology Center, where businesses from Antigua will come in and work with our people in the School of Business and stuff, and work with folks in who want to do an app in computer science and stuff and develop those apps. Once the businesses see that we're doing that, then they will buy into that philosophy and buy into that concept, and also be there on the continuum to give us money in terms of developing these technologies more.
Caribbean people are no strangers to adversity. A quick glance at our region's history will easily tell you that. And yet centuries of struggle have only made us incredibly resilient and resourceful, allowing us to consistently turn challenges into opportunities and make unique contributions to the world. Emerging technologies such as artificial intelligence hold the power to disrupt many of the systems that have long prevented us from tapping into our true potential. People like Curtis Charles can see this quite clearly, but they also recognize the need for us to position ourselves to engage these tools on our own terms and take full advantage of the changing global circumstances. If we can continue to support regional efforts to do this through training and collaborative research, then it isn't hard to predict a genuinely sustainable future for the Caribbean. Anyway, that's all we have for you on this episode of Caesar Voices. We'd like to thank our guest for taking the time to share his insights with us. We'd also like to thank our funded partner, the Barbados Environmental Conservation Trust, or BECT, for making this episode possible. BECT aims to help Barbados reach its national development goals by supporting local initiatives aimed at environmental sustainability. Of course, we'd also like to thank our listeners for tuning in to the Caesar Voices podcast. If you like what you've been hearing so far, feel free to give us a rating wherever you're listening. We'd also like to remind you that you can visit our website, caesarjournal.org/donations, to lend your financial support. Or join our monthly donor club on Patreon to gain access to exclusive content, or even be featured in an episode of our podcast. Just click the link in the description. You might also want to check out the Caesar Journal YouTube page for exclusive clips and videos on all kinds of topics related to Caribbean sustainability. And if you'd like to sponsor an episode of Caesar Voices and feature your company or NGO, please click on our corporate link to learn more.